Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers, a once-a-week show covering all things Buffalo Sabres and NHL hockey. We thank you for joining us today, and to make sure you don't miss any future episodes, be sure to subscribe to and like the show on YouTube, follow and share on Facebook, and catch the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com and on our Twitter feed. You can find us at Sabres Scoop THW and everything else at the Hockey Writer. So after a busy week following the trade deadline, we got a little slow down, but still a lot to get to. The Sabres officially eliminated from the playoffs for the 10th straight season. That ties an NHL record for the longest drought in hockey history. Only the Sabres and New Jersey Devils have been officially eliminated from the playoffs to this point. The Vegas Golden Knights the other night, first team to officially clinch a playoff spot. We'll get to all this moving forward, but boys, 10 straight years, no playoffs. Brandon, I'll start with you. I mean, that kind of says it all, but just general thoughts on the now decade-long drought.
Yeah, you know what? The decade-long drought, that's a long time. Sports fans in Buffalo have been suffering for a while in one regard or another, right? The Bills had a 17-year drought and then they broke that and they're good now. And both teams just can't be good at once, it seems. So the Sabres have their turn and they're tied. Yeah, longest drought in history. That sucks. But you know what? It almost didn't feel as bad when they were officially eliminated because they were kind of there all season and they've been playing better lately. So they kind of masked it. Maybe that was the plan all along, but that's certainly not, a title you want to have, the longest one. So let's hope that it doesn't extend into 11 seasons. Jordan, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's gonna? What do you think of the drought so far?
I don't know. I mean, the Sabres really went down fighting there, eh? Just to get mathematically eliminated. They could have continued the losing streak and been mathematically eliminated a few games ago. But yeah, it's been awful. I wrote an article called "The Buffalo Sabres Decade of Disappointment," and it still applies here today. Like the last time the Sabres, like Billy Lino, wasn't even on the Buffalo Sabres the last time they made the playoffs. That's how long ago it was. That's something.
Yeah, it's been bad, and in a league where there's so much parity, so much turnover year to year, it really should be impossible to miss the playoffs 10 years in a row. But Sabres have found a way to do it, and I don't think anyone should get their hopes too high that it's going to happen again next year. But it is what it is, and their playoff percentage chance has been, I think, in the single digits going back to the beginning of March. So pretty much a foregone conclusion for a while now.
Yeah, Nick, there may not be some hope right at this moment, but in the future, we have Jack Quinn. And, he just had a successful surgery to repair a hernia today and will be missing the remainder of the season. So this season's done now. So I'm curious, guys, what did you think about his play with the Rochester Americans? I actually wrote an article on this today, but I'm curious to get you guys' thoughts. So let's start with you, Nick.
Yeah, it's a tough break. He kind of was at a disadvantage from the start. He's a guy who would usually have played in the Ontario Hockey League this season. Obviously wasn't an option, but his numbers were pretty good in Rochester. 15 games, 9 points. It was a minus 14, which is not great, but we all know plus minus is a bit of a flawed stat. But you know what? He's a young kid. He's got a long way to go. He was the number 8 pick. I took a look at the last couple number 8 picks. You got guys like Philip Broberg, Adam Bachvis, and of course Casey Middlestat with the Sabres. So it takes a little while for guys with that kind of pedigree. Quinn came in. There was a little bit of unrest, I would say, among Sabres fans who maybe wish they would have gone with someone like Marco Rossi, who had a little better, I think, pedigree among scouts coming in. But it's a long way to go. I think this year you can kind of treat as just a wash for Jack Quinn, and it's going to be a wash for a lot of these guys in such a tumultuous season.
Yeah, and you said it, this is a player that was supposed to be in the OHL this year, especially if not, for more than that. And, he's on an Americans team this season that isn't as good as they typically have been in recent years. They're usually right near the top of that division, competing with the Toronto Marlies for the best team in their division. And, this year there was a lot of turnover. Obviously, a lot of the players ended up playing for the big club with the Sabres, and maybe he's not surrounded with the best players, best line mates, whatever, but 9 points that, not quite a point per game, a few points off of that, but he was close. And a lot of people were calling him the best goal scorer available in the 2020 draft. So that's quite the title for that player. And it's a lot to live up to, but excuse me, that's certainly something the Sabres could use. So, yeah.
Well, it's certainly hard to score at the AHL. Like his 0.6 points per game was actually among the top 45 in league history for a 19-year-old season with a minimum of
Sweet.
15 games played, And Chad Dominicus, who really tracks, he actually manually tracks certain stats like at 5v5. So in terms of, he definitely wasn't ready because his play driving, like his primary shot contributions, his shot share rates, stuff like that. He was actually like 17th and 20th on Rochester, respectively. So he was kind of below replacement level in that regard. But he has a really good finishing ability. And that's what the scouts keep on saying about this player. I think he will be a decent guy. I mean, Marco Rossi, and when you look at a chart like from Hockey Prospecting, it kind of makes it seem like he's going to be a better player. But we have to see how these guys' careers go out first. And I think Jack Quinn will be at least an okay Sabre. And I don't think we should write him off yet.
Yeah, definitely. So he's a guy who hopefully a lot of people were hoping was going to make his NHL debut this year. That's not going to happen. One guy who's set to make his NHL debut for the Sabres is top goalie prospect Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, called up to the big squad. He was on the bench tonight against the Boston Bruins, but is set to make his first start in the NHL tomorrow night. He's a guy who's had some ups and downs in his development so far, but at 21 years old, obviously has a lot of hockey in front of him. So, but gentlemen, what do we think about this? Is it too early to bring him up? Is it good to get him this experience? Brandon, I'll send it to you. Thoughts on Luke?
Yeah, I was saying all season that it was going to be way too early to bring him up. Just where he is in his career as a 21-year-old. It's so rare that somebody comes in at that age as a goalie and makes a difference, but obviously that's not what they're asking him to do right now. So now that they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, I've warmed up to the idea a little bit and say, you know what, maybe let him get a few games of action. It can't hurt. It certainly can't hurt his development if he plays 1 or 2 games. It can't hurt the team because they can't be hurt more than they are right now. So I think maybe this is a good idea at this point. Maybe let him see, hey, this is what the NHL is like. Maybe see what he can do and see where he is in his development timeline, because he's not doing great in the AHL, but maybe at the NHL, if he has a taste of the NHL, he can see and maybe improve a little bit more. Jordan, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Brandon. Like, had this been amidst the 18-game losing streak, I would have said definitely not. But the Sabres are looking better as of late. And I think, to give him at least one game to see how he looks, it could be a Michael DiPietro situation there in Vancouver. But I think he'll honestly be fine. Spencer Knight just made his debut in Florida. And yeah, he obviously has a higher pedigree, but I think he stopped like 33 of 34 shots. So I think Lehkonen will look pretty decent, hopefully.
For sure, yeah. And this all while the team, like I mentioned earlier, has been playing a lot better. They lost the last 2 games against the Bruins. So they lost tonight, obviously, as we're speaking now, and on Tuesday. And before that, though, in their past 10, they were actually a couple of games above NHL 500. So they were playing some pretty good hockey. And a lot of people, a lot of Sabres fans, are really taking a liking to this Don Granato guy as the interim head coach. And a lot of people are saying, why not seriously consider him for the next full-time head coaching job? So he's promoted I really enjoyed his press conferences. I don't know if you guys have seen some of his sound bites, some of his quips and all that. Like, a lot of people are saying, wow, this guy really hated working for Kruger, like the way he talks. He talks about letting the players play more offensively. Why would you try to fit them into a system if they're not going to play well in the system? Let them be free, and a lot of people like that. Let's just put the question out there. Do you think Don Granato is going to be the head coach next season? Let's go to you, Nick.
Yeah, a week or two ago, I would have said I was maybe probably leaning towards no, but I mean, it seems like the answer is going to be trending towards yes more day by day. And I think the reason for that is how well a lot of these young players have progressed. In my last article, this was kind of the focus, how well some of these young players have gotten better under Granato. Guys like Casey Middlestat, Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin looks like a completely different player under Granato. And I think moving forward, this is going to be a team next year, again, that's going to be relying a lot on young players. And Granato seems to have found a rapport with those guys. And when Kruger was fired, we immediately looked at who could possibly be the coach next year. And the big names that came up were obvious: Bruce Boudreau, Gerard Gallant, maybe even a guy like John Tortorella. But I think if you feel confident that Granato has the trust of the locker room and this team has an identity, I think that's the most important part. Having this team have an identity, and that starts with the coach. And Granato seems to have molded this team. It doesn't at the moment does not have a ton of talent, but they're playing hard every night. And at this point, that's all you can ask for. So it's definitely become more interesting these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Nick. Like Sabres Twitter just loves this guy. And how could you not? He's making all of the right decisions. He's saying all of the right things. And I just really like everything he's doing so far. And the Sabres have a winning record under him. And like if they were to play like this throughout the whole season, they would have been fighting for the playoffs. And an interesting decision that he did make today was Colin Miller was scratched for Will Borgen tonight. And I'm just curious for you guys, Colin Miller has a $3.875 million cap hit. And ever since he's been traded from the Vegas Golden Knights, where he was historically, benched near the end of his tenure there by Gerard Gallant, it hasn't gone right for him at all. Like, especially since coming to Buffalo, he isn't able to stick in the lineup. So I'm curious, Brandon, what has gone wrong for Miller in Buffalo?
Yeah, he seems to have been an easy scapegoat for a lot of the Sabres' poor performances. Just I feel like when he makes mistakes, they're pretty evident, whether they're turnovers or he doesn't get back on a play or, things like that. But he has been able to drive the play and sometimes even like quarterbacks, like, offensive zone pressure. So sometimes he plays pretty well. Other times he doesn't play so well. I think he's just an easy scapegoat. He's kind of like Risto, like Ristolainen is always a guy who is easy to point to. And I certainly don't think Colin Miller lived up to the expectations that he had, but neither did Brandon Montour, and neither has Risto really, and neither does anybody who plays right D for the Sabres, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. Will Borgen, though, I was happy to see him in there because I really like Will Borgen. I loved the Dahlin Borgen pairing from earlier in the season. Borgen's a physical guy. He looks like he wants to be there, wants to play like the rest of the Amerks who have come up and played for them this year. So I'm kind of digging Will Borgen in the lineup. You guys got anything to add?
Yeah, I think Miller, I agree, Brandon. His mistakes are kind of among the more obvious ones. He's had some bad turnovers recently. You look at his underlying numbers, his expected goals for percentage has been around 45 for a while now. And I think he had actually played pretty well with Rasmus Dahlin by some of the numbers, but ever since Dahlin got paired up with Yoki Haru, Miller has essentially been left without a dance partner and has kind of cycled through different partners, hasn't found success with really anybody. And he's a guy, yeah, the Sabres kind of have a few core young defensemen that they're going to probably be relying on. Miller probably isn't part of that equation. I think he could be a guy Seattle could be targeting in the expansion draft. So yeah, it's another one of those free agent decisions that hasn't gone the Sabres way. And it seems like there's just been a lot of them these last 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. Something like that hasn't gone a certain player's way in the past number of years is, a certain number of NHL starts and definitely not an NHL win. I'm talking about Dustin Tokarski here, the goalie who was signed by the Sabres as sort of a last-ditch effort to try to shore up their goalie depth ahead of the 20 to 21 season. And I would say based on the season, maybe they did a pretty good job here, and especially because we got a very nice story out of it. So Dustin Tokarski was named the first star of the NHL last week, along with a frontline worker, which I like that the NHL does that every week. And basically, people are calling this his comeback to the NHL. He hadn't played in the NHL nearly 5 years, and he won his first NHL game in I think just over 5 years last week. So he went 2-2-1 last week. And so 2 wins. The first one was his first one in that many years. And it was special because at the end of the game, he sort of did the James Reimer, took the glove, up to the skies. And people are like, oh, what is that about? And he said, oh, that was for my dad. He passed away however many years ago. That one was for him. And it was a very good story. And then he won another game and he's played quite well, actually. I heard the announcers say that in the last month he has the best save percentage on in certain, I think, special team situations. So that's really cool. Anything you guys want to say about Tokarski? Let's go to you, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, that NHL season is crazy this year when Dustin Tokarski is getting the first star of the week, right? Because I read a stat, like I don't think Jack Eichel's had the first star of the week since like October of 2019, if I'm recalling that correctly. But it's really cool to see that for Dustin. He's really shows up in big moments, like we saw it with Team Canada at the World Juniors, I believe in 2009. with Montreal when he had to come in for the injured Carey Price in 2015. This guy will come through if you need him to. And yeah, he doesn't really appear to be an NHL regular at the moment, but goalies are weird, man. Like Tim Thomas became an elite goaltender, like at age 30 and afterwards, like who knows? I think Dustin Tokarski could potentially be paving a way to a really good, successful story here.
Yeah, he's been a rare feel good story on the team this year. I was taking a look at some of the numbers. He and Linus Ullmark have almost identical save percentages, but Ullmark's goals against is 263. Tokarski's coming in tonight was 305. So he's been really unlucky as far as some of the defense in front of him. Wasn't great tonight. We'll get into that a little later, but I think, yeah, at 31 years old, he's actually at this point, I think might be the oldest regular on the team. It's great to see him get these games. Probably doesn't figure to be a part of the team's long-term future, but story in a season like this, a story like that is a good thing for everyone to get around.
100%. And with that, let's reset the show here. Once again, you're watching or listening to Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to and like the show on YouTube, follow and share us on Facebook, and catch all the great hockey content on the hockeywriters.com and on our Twitter feed, which is at Sabres Scoop THW. Nick, there was a game tonight in which the Sabres lost 5-1. For some reason, it didn't feel like such a trouncing, but take it away with any notes you have from it.
Yeah, you're right. Watching the game, the Sabres definitely had their chances. And we just talked up Dustin Tokarski. Got to bring him back down to earth a little bit. He was not very good tonight. Let in a couple soft goals, including one clean shot that he apparently just totally missed. So yeah, the Sabres, the Bruins have their number, and they've had it for years. Arttu Ruotsalainen had a nice goal, but it was the only goal the Sabres had. And Sabres have to play the Bruins again tomorrow night, but at this point, it's getting to the point where the Sabres are just want to get to the end of the year and no longer have to see the Boston Bruins again. Good news for the Sabres. We've talked up the Taylor Hall trade, and Hall has scored 2 goals for the Bruins, but one of the guys the Sabres got in return, Anders Bjork, had another assist tonight. He's been one of the Sabres' better players recently. So any other general takeaways, Jordan, from tonight's game?
Yeah, my boy Arttu Ruotsalainen has 3 goals in 8 games. And just as for the viewers watching or listening, I am going to have a gift coming potentially next week with maybe his name on the back. So we'll see if I can debut that or not.
Oh, there we go.
But yeah, I mean, the Sabres, obviously, it's not that surprising that they're losing because the Boston Bruins have really found their groove. We were talking about this team as potentially missing the playoffs. And although there's still an option here because the New York Rangers are really surging as of late, they look like such a complete team. Taylor Hall, like I said he was going to, has really filled out the 5-on-5 scoring needs that team required. And for the Sabres, they're just finishing out the season here. They're still looking better. That second line of Cousins, Ruotsalainen, and Bjork has surprisingly looked really good for a line that's that young. They're really driving play pretty well, and they're generating scoring opportunities, and most importantly, are capitalizing on them.
Yeah, something I saw on Twitter tonight was that Arttu Ruotsalainen, 3 goals in 8 games. That's more goals than Taylor Hall had in 37 games. So this is a guy who, let's keep him in the lineup going into next season. Should have been there this year the whole time, so keep him next season. And as we transition into some general NHL news here, we have a really cool thing to talk about. I grew up watching the San Jose Sharks. I have Patrick Marleau's jersey, and so to see him surpass this milestone was pretty surreal. And if you don't know what we're talking about, Patrick Marleau officially passed Mr. Hockey, Gordie Howe, for first all-time in NHL games played with 1768. That is 1,768 NHL games. 1768 more than I will ever play. And he's had the spotlight on him all week, and I'm happy about that. He deserves it. This is a great guy. He's loved around the league, I think, as a very polite, upstanding player. Plays the game hard, talented player. Any thoughts on this, you guys?
I don't know, Brandon. I think if you really try hard, you train in the summer, I think you could potentially make the Sabres next season as they look to make the playoffs. But
yeah.
Regarding Patrick Marleau, it's crazy that people somehow were trying to be negative about this, especially towards such a positive guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a player that really, I know it's debatable whether he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but if you're literally first in the league in games played and you've been able to be that durable. Like you haven't even been, remember, he hasn't even been injured. I think he's been injured 23 games in his career, That's just unbelievable. This guy has been incredible. And, it was a really good feel-good moment for the entire NHL when it really needed it.
Yeah, it's a great story. And naturally, I ended up going to Marleau's hockey reference page just to kind of get a glimpse of it. And you think of Patrick Marleau, you don't instantly think first ballot Hall of Famer. And you mentioned 1,769 games played. He's got 1,197 points, which at an 82 game pace is only 55 points. So he's not a guy who was, in the Art Ross conversation, but just the longevity. I looked it up. 7 times scored at least 30 goals, 15 times scored at least 20 goals in a season. I mean, that's just incredible reliability and productivity over decades. And, I don't think he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but at some point, quantity matters. And he's got as much more quantity than anyone in the history of the game. So another big story in the NHL this year, the Vancouver Canucks coming back from almost a month off due to a very severe outbreak of COVID-19. And, they're playing the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're going to get the doors blown off. That is not what happened. The Canucks beat the Maple Leafs twice, including the second game quite convincingly. And the Canucks are on the outside looking in of the playoff picture in the North, but they are still mathematically alive and their chances are getting better by the day. So, gentlemen, do we think there's any chance that the Canucks can make a playoff push? And the other question is, should they try to make a playoff push? Because if you take a look at their schedule, it is incredibly condensed. They're going to be playing essentially every day if they try to get all these games in. So thoughts on the Canucks situation? Jordan, I'll start with you.
Well, I just have a funny thing to mention here, and I always find it funny when Leaf fans are still surprised that the Leafs lose these type of games. Like, this is the Leafs we're talking about here. You really think they're going to win a game that they're supposed to? No, that's not how it works here. But, honestly, it's interesting here for Vancouver. They really are going to have to play so many games. And, they even traded away Jordy Ben to Winnipeg, at the trade deadline. So they were a seller. But St. Louis, as we've seen in the past couple of years, have been able to sell at the trade deadline and still make the playoffs. And that ultimately got them a Stanley Cup a few years later because of the assets they were acquiring in return there. So I think Vancouver still has a chance here because Montreal really is struggling as of late. We saw they lost. Although they did win 4-3 against Edmonton yesterday. They did almost blow their lead, though, in that one. But if these guys like Patterson, Besser can come back and Quinn Hughes really start to feel it, and if Thatcher Demko, he can really come alive when he needs to be. They're still in this, guys.
Yeah, if you're just crunching the numbers and you're looking at it from a pure mathematical standpoint, they're only, I say only, but they are 10 points out of the playoffs right now as it stands. But they have 5 games in hand on the Canadiens. So let's say the Canadiens go on a 5-game skid and the Canucks go on a 5-game win streak, they're in. So should they try? Absolutely. They're a young team. Try to boost your confidence a little bit, get your footing under you, and let's try to have a push here at the end of the season. Should they? I think they should. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to make it happen, though. They still have to, they have to jump over the Flames and then they have to jump over the Habs. And then they'll be in that 4 spot. They're not going to get further than that. Are they going to do it? I don't think so, but I would love to watch them try. So,
well, gentlemen, it's always so fun to talk about the standings. That's why we got to talk about all the other teams, not just the Vancouver Canucks. We can't exclude all these other teams. So let's do it again. Let's talk about the Central Division standings and what teams we realistically think could make the playoffs. Top 4 in each division. We're starting off with the Central. Carolina's first. There's no way they're missing. They could even win the President's Trophy. They got 65. The Florida Panthers are second. They almost have an identical record. Just they played 2 more games, so they're also tied there for 65. And the Tampa Bay Lightning, they're not missing it. They got 64. That's established top 3 right there. Doesn't get any better than that. This is where it starts to get interesting. The 4-5 spot. Nashville is 52, Dallas 50. The Chicago Blackhawks are still there at 49, and they've started to crumble a little bit as of late, with Dallas and Jason Robertson specifically really looking good. Detroit and Columbus just suck. They're not going anywhere. Let's just say it how it is. They're not making the playoffs this year. So let's start with you, Brandon. What does your Central Division look like, specifically the playoff teams? Run it through us 1 to 4.
Yeah, well, I'm going to start off by saying I can't believe that the Blue Jackets are under the Detroit Red Wings in the standings right now for last in that division. But let's go to the top 4. I think it's going to stack up like this. It's going to go Canes, Panthers, Lightning. That's going to stay the way it is. There's just no way that's going to change. the Hurricanes, I believe they split their season series with the Tampa Bay Lightning, which was very impressive. And it really showed a lot of resilience there. And I think heading into the playoffs, even though it was just a series split, I think that's going to really bode well for them in as far as their confidence overcoming that team that just won the Stanley Cup. So I think that top three is going to stay the same. The four spot, man, you're looking at the Preds, Stars, and Blackhawks. You're looking at a team like the Blackhawks who started hotter than they should have and sort of fizzled out. The Preds and Stars who started pretty badly and then have sort of really picked it up. I'm going to go with the team that was just there and say the Dallas Stars sneak in at number 4, just because they started so poorly. They were at the bottom where the Red Wings are right now, and they've clawed their way back up. Jason Robertson is catching up to Kirill Kaprizov for rookie points, making a case for himself. Let's go Canes, Panthers, Lightning, Stars.
Can't go wrong with that. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, mine's not too different. I mean, the top three are pretty well established. You can make an argument that the Central has 3 of the 5 or 6 best teams in the league. I'm going to go with the Hurricanes getting that top spot. I think the Lightning will eventually overtake the Panthers. I'm going to slot them in at 2. And I think anyway you slice it, whatever matchups we get, any matchup of Hurricanes, Panthers, Lightning, that's going to be a fantastic playoff series. Those are teams that don't meet in the playoffs very often. And those teams right now all have a ton of talent. And the race for the 4 seed is going to be really exciting. And I agree. I think the Stars are kind of peaking at the right time. The Blackhawks, I think they peaked a little early. They're starting to fizzle out a little bit. And the Predators, they've just been impossible to figure out this season as far as, whether they should be buying or selling. They're in the definition of that murky middle. So 1 to 4, I'll go Hurricanes, Lightning, Panthers, and Stars. So let's move on to the East Division. A lot of people thought this would be the toughest division in hockey, and that's pretty much been the case, as the top 4, I think, has been pretty well established. We've got the Capitals, Islanders, Penguins, and Bruins. The Bruins have obviously been red hot lately on a tear. So, gentlemen, what do we think we pretty much know who the top 4 are going to be. So what's the order going to be? Brandon, I'll send it to you.
Tough question. I'm going to switch things up a little bit here. And you look at the Capitals and the Islanders, they have identical records right now. Both have 46 games played, 29-13 and 462 points, at least the standings I'm looking at. They will update after tonight. But so I'm going to say that the Islanders overtake the Capitals, because why not? Let's have a little fun. And then I'm going to say that the Bruins will overtake the Penguins, just because I think they are the better team. They're the more complete team. I think they're the more experienced team, save, the Penguins core. But nobody expected the Penguins to be there this season. Certainly not me. So I think the way the Bruins are playing, they might overtake them. So let's go Isles, Caps, Bruins, Penguins. Jordan, you're going to argue with me? You're going to agree? What are we thinking?
Well, guys, you're missing a real big statistic here. Cody Ceci's 10 points at 5v5 lead all NHL defensemen since March 27th. If you didn't know that. So I think Cody Ceci is going to lead Pittsburgh to first in that division. Jeff Carter's looking good there too. Tristan Jarry starting to come hot when you need to be. I think Washington goalies is going to falter. I think they're going to end up third. I think they're going to drop from first to third. We're going to get another Pittsburgh-Washington matchup, which we haven't seen in a little while. So I think that will be fun to watch. And although I think the Rangers really are going to be close, like I think they're going to be within 5 points of that 4th spot. The Boston Bruins are too good here to really, they're not going to miss it. Taylor Hall is finally going to get to the playoffs on a good team. That's the asterisk, not New Jersey or Arizona. Sorry, New Jersey, Arizona fans, but the Bruins are another deal there. And I think that's what my standings look like.
Yeah, I think mine's somewhat similar. I think the Capitals will hold on to get that 1 seed. I think the Islanders will finish 2. And I do think the Bruins will overtake Pittsburgh for that 3rd spot. And yeah, we're going to have some great playoff matchups. Either way, any way you slice it, a lot of talent, a lot of playoff experience among these 4 teams. And those matchups are always great. So we were in the East. Let's move out West. And the West has been an interesting division this year. We kind of figured we'd had a top 3 set in stone in the Avalanche, Golden Knights, and Blues. And for 2 of those teams, that's been true. The Avalanche and Golden Knights have been duking it out first place pretty much all season long. But the Minnesota Wild have been the 3rd team that's all but locked up a spot. And you got the Blues and the Arizona Coyotes fighting for the 4 seed. So I'll do mine real quick and then send it over. I think the Avalanche will eventually take the 1 seed. followed by the Golden Knights, followed by the Wild. And I do think the Blues, with their championship pedigree, will hold on to that 4 seed, hold off the Arizona Coyotes. Jordan, your thoughts on the West Division?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting here going down the stretch. We know Vegas has already clinched their 4 points up, but Colorado does have 3 games in hand there. So I could see Colorado swooping in, and I'm going to say they take first place in that West Division. I think they're too good, and we're going to see a Vegas-Minnesota series there. The 4th spot's so interesting. Like, people aren't even thinking that the San Jose Sharks are within 4 points of a playoff spot here. Even the Los Angeles Kings, they've only played 43 games, are within 5 points of the 4th place spot. So I'm going to go completely off the board here. It's not going to be Arizona or St. Louis making the playoffs. I'm trying. You know what? I'm going to say the Los Angeles Kings clinch that 4th spot. They're going to clinch it. They're going to win. They're going to go on a winning streak. The Los Angeles Kings are making the 2021 NHL playoffs.
All right, I'm gonna switch things up a little bit more even here. So I think that the Vegas Golden Knights are gonna hold on to that number 1 spot. First team to clinch in the entire NHL a playoff spot. 9-1 in their last 10. 8-game win streak as we're speaking right now. Avalanche are also 9-1 in their last 10, but there's something about Vegas. They just, ever since they've gotten into the league, they've had that swagger. They're playing with it this year. You have Fleury being way better than people expected, and they're firing on all cylinders. Let's go Vegas number 1. Let's keep the Avalanche at number 2. That's just how things are going to stack up. Minnesota at number 3. I think the amount of points that these 3 teams have, it's pretty much locked in at how it is. I don't think anyone under them is going to catch them. The number 4 spot, super interesting. The Sharks had a nice push there. I don't think they're going to get it done, though. The Kings had a nice push there. I don't know. Let's say between Arizona and the St. Louis Blues, give me Arizona. They just got Darcy Kemper back. He's going to be a difference maker for this team. The Coyotes have played well against, they're not good in their last 10. Neither are the Blues, though, but they've played well against some good teams. Let's put some playoff hockey in the desert. So that's how it's stacking up for me.
Yeah, totally, guys. And let's finish off these standing predictions for probably one of the more predictable divisions out there, and that is the North Division. Now, first place spot is still somewhat open, as the Toronto Maple Leafs here did win tonight, and they are currently have 63 points at first place, 6 points ahead of the Winnipeg Jets, who they defeated tonight here. So they do have 1 game in hand, Winnipeg, but I do sense that the Leafs are going to finish first here. And I do think it's going to be some sort of combination of Winnipeg, Edmonton. I'm going to say Edmonton leapfrogs them because they have been playing better. Connor McDavid's going to get to 100 points here, guys. He had 3 points his last game. He has to get 23 points in the next 11 games. You don't count out Connor McDavid for something like that. He's going to do it. And if you're really putting up 23 points in 11 games, Edmonton's going to win some hockey games here down the stretch. 4th place is somewhat interesting, as we mentioned, because we talked a bit about Vancouver. It's still possible. We know Calgary just sucks. They're worse than Nashville. They don't know what they are, but they're just that tier worse. So they're going to get a tiny bit of a better pick, but who knows what they're going to do? They got to trade Gaudreau, Monahan in the offseason. They got to figure that out. I don't think the Ottawa Senators are making the playoffs, guys, even though I don't think they've been mathematically eliminated yet. So I'm going Toronto 1. I'm going to say Edmonton, Winnipeg 2, 3, and Montreal will be the 4th spot, exactly how it is now, except just a little flipperoonie there for 2 and 3. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I think there's been a little bit of unrest among Maple Leafs fans recently, but I think they've got that 1 seed in hand. I don't see them losing that down the stretch. The 2 seed is where it really gets interesting. McDavid and Draisaitl have deservedly gotten a lot of the headlines this year, but I feel like we've been sleeping on the Winnipeg Jets. They've been a very consistent team pretty much from the start of the season, kind of hovering in that 9 to 12 range if you're doing power rankings. And I think they've got arguably the best goalie in the division in Connor Hellebuck. And that counts for a lot comes playoffs time. We know goaltending gets weird in the playoffs. You get a hot goalie, you can go pretty far. The Jets have a lot of depth up front. Defense is obviously the concern, but I think they'll hold on and get that 2 seed. And they're going to be a team that I don't think anyone wants to play in the playoffs. And yeah, I do think the Canadians will hold on for the 4th seed. Vancouver's a great story, but I think they're going to be running on fumes by the end of the season. And even if they somehow miraculously make the playoffs, I don't think the Maple Leafs should have any issue with them. And now watch the Vancouver Canucks make it as a 4 seed and then sweep the Maple Leafs in the first round. Mark it down. Brandon, to you.
Yeah, that I could see that happening totally. Let's make it real simple. I'm gonna say it stays exactly how it is, but I do have a few notes. So the Maple Leafs, is staying in first place in my opinion. But let's call it how it is. They had a 5-game losing streak before they won tonight. So, maybe cause for concern. I don't know. There's been question marks about Jack Campbell ever since his historic run and record setting there. I don't know, but I will say I keep them there because this is a team that by all accounts, got much better at the deadline, and the Jets just didn't. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a knock on the Jets, but there wasn't much that they did to improve their roster. Now, that could be a vote of confidence in their roster. Like you said, Connor Hellebuck, far and away, definitely, I'd agree with you, the best goalie in this division, and that can go a long way in the playoffs, as we know. The Jets haven't been able to get over that hump, but maybe this year's the year. Edmonton Oilers, you have number 1 and 2 in points, McDavid and Draisaitl. That's insane, really. And the clip that these guys are scoring at is crazy, and they're going to be super exciting. But I think they stay in that third spot, and then Dominic Ducharme and his Canadiens stay locked in at number 4 for me. I know there's a lot of turmoil with him and Bergevin there among Habs fans, but let's just say if they make the playoffs and win some games, maybe that'll change.
Yeah, totally, guys. And we're set up to wrap up here the show. So I'm curious, what are your final thoughts as we head into this next week here? Let's start with you, Brandon. Any last words?
No last words, except I'm very excited to see Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen make his NHL debut. That's probably where my eyes are going to be glued to tomorrow night. It will be tonight when you guys are listening to this. So super excited for that. Also very excited to see the young guys continue to score for the Sabres. I'm talking Middlestat, Cousins. I'm talking Ruotsalainen. It's good to have Will Borgen back. I think there's light at the end of the tunnel, but let's let this season wind down to an end.
Yeah, I agree. I think the young guys is obviously going to be the story of these last few games. And taking a look at the standings, the Sabres still sit in dead last. They are in slight danger of pulling a New York Jets and falling out of the dead last spot. Different scenario, of course. Doesn't in the NHL finishing dead last doesn't guarantee you the number 1 pick, but the Devils have just completely fallen apart. So the Sabres, in a season where they've lost 18 games in a row, there's a possibility they might not even finish last in their division. So that's something that bears watching down the stretch.
My final thoughts, guys. I love Artur Ruotsalainen. No words, no more words need to be said except
Well
for
said.
this. We thank you for joining us. This has been Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube, follow and share us on Facebook, and follow the show on Twitter at Sabres Scoop THW. Don't miss out on all the great hockey content at thehockeywriters.com. For Brandon and Nick, this is Jordan, and this has been Sabres Scoop. Until next time.